Imagine waking up every single morning and the very first thought in your mind isn't coffee, isn't your phone, isn't the day ahead. It's a quiet, persistent pull, a kind of gravity, something that feels less like a craving and more like a reminder that the world is a little too sharp without it. This is the inner world of a daily cannabis user. And it is far more complicated, far more human, and far more fascinating than most people ever stop to consider. We tend to flatten this story into two cartoon versions. The lazy stoner on the couch, eyes half open, laughing at nothing. Or the enlightened spiritual seeker, using the plant as a tool for creativity and peace. But the truth lives in neither of those places. It lives somewhere in between, in the quiet hours, in the habits that become rituals, in the rituals that become necessity, in the necessity that starts to look a lot like identity. So let's step inside. Let's actually go there. The first thing you need to understand is that for a daily smoker, cannabis doesn't feel like a drug in the dramatic sense. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock over furniture. It settles in slowly, like light shifting across a room in the late afternoon. Over time, the brain begins to reorganize itself around that presence. The endocannabinoid system, which is already a fundamental part of how every human brain regulates mood, appetite, memory, and stress, starts to defer to the external supply. It begins to trust the plant to do what it used to do on its own. This is not weakness. This is biology. This is the brain doing exactly what brains do, adapting, optimizing, finding the path of least resistance. But here's where it gets interesting. When you ask a daily smoker to describe why they smoke, the answers are almost never about getting high. Not really. They say things like, "It helps me sleep." They say, "It quiets the noise." They say, "I'm just more myself when I smoke." And that last one is the one that should stop you in your tracks. Because what does it mean when a substance starts to feel more like you than you do? Researchers call this something like ego dissolution or cognitive reframing, but the smoker on the couch just calls it peace. They found a door. And after you've walked through it enough times, the world on the other side starts to feel like the real world, and the world before it starts to feel like the waiting room. Let's talk about memory, because this is one of the most misunderstood pieces of the puzzle. THC, the active compound in cannabis, interferes with the formation of short-term memories. Not dramatically. Not like amnesia in a movie. More like someone turned the contrast down slightly on the present moment. Daily users often report a strange relationship with time. Hours can blur together. Conversations from earlier in the day can feel like they happened a week ago. There is a dreamlike quality to lived experience, where moments feel richly textured but loosely connected. And here's the paradox. Many daily smokers are extraordinarily functional people. They go to work. They raise children. They write music and build companies and have deep friendships. From the outside, nothing looks broken. But on the inside, there is often a quiet background hum of something that isn't quite anxiety and isn't quite longing, but sits somewhere between the two. A kind of emotional static. The plant turns down the volume on that static. And turning down that static feels, in the moment, like clarity. Now let's talk about the morning. Because this is where you can see everything. A non-daily smoker who uses cannabis recreationally wakes up the same way they went to sleep. Present, clear themselves. But a heavy daily user wakes up into something different. Scientists call it a withdrawal state, though that word carries more weight than it probably should for cannabis. It's not dangerous. It's not like opioid withdrawal. But it is real. Irritability, a low-grade restlessness, disrupted sleep even though they were using cannabis to sleep in the first place, a flatness to things, like someone turned the saturation down on the world. And so the morning smoke isn't really about pleasure. It's about return. It's about getting back to baseline. And this is the moment where casual use and dependence begin to quietly trade places, because when you need something to feel normal, the whole calculation has changed. But before we rush to judgment, let's sit with this honestly. Millions of people need a cup of coffee to feel like themselves in the morning. Millions more need a specific pill, a specific routine, a specific rhythm before the day feels manageable. Human beings are creatures of chemical dependency in ways both profound and mundane. The question is never really whether you depend on something. The question is what that dependency costs you, and whether you are paying that cost with your eyes open. Many daily cannabis users are paying that cost knowingly. They've made a calculation. The anxiety that cannabis manages is real. The sleep disorder it addresses is real. The chronic pain, the PTSD, the social terror that it softens, all of it is real. And for a significant portion of daily users, the plant is doing something that nothing else has done quite as effectively or as gently. But for another portion, something more complicated is happening. Because here is the thing about numbing the static. The static is often trying to tell you something. Anxiety is the mind's alarm system. Depression is often grief that hasn't been processed. Restlessness is often the body's signal that something needs to change. And when you turn down the volume on those signals day after day, year after year, they don't go away. They wait. They accumulate. And sometimes, on an ordinary Tuesday, they arrive all at once with a kind of force that the plant can no longer cushion. This is the conversation that daily smokers often have with themselves in the quiet moments. The moments between the first smoke and the second. The moments at 2 in the morning when the high has worn thin and the thoughts arrive unfiltered. There is often, underneath everything, a deep and sincere question. Not, should I quit, but something more tender than that. Something more like, who am I without this? And that question, that one right there, might be the most important question any human being can ask about any habit, any relationship, any identity they've built their daily life around. The mind of a daily cannabis user is not fogged. It is not empty. It is not a cautionary tale dressed in smoke. It is a human mind, doing what human minds do, searching for comfort, searching for stability, searching for a version of existence that feels livable and sometimes even beautiful. It is a mind that has found something that works, and is learning, slowly and sometimes painfully, that working and being right are not the same thing. It is a mind that deserves curiosity, not contempt. Nuance, not a verdict. Because if you look closely, if you really look, you will find inside that daily ritual something deeply universal. The desire to soften the edges of being alive. The wish, ancient and entirely human, to feel at home inside your own skin. To quiet the noise just long enough to hear something that feels like peace. We all have our versions of this. Our mechanisms. Our doors. Our daily rituals that hold the rawness of the world at bay. The question, for all of us, regardless of what that ritual looks like, is always the same one. Am I using this? Or has this become a way of not having to use myself? That question doesn't have an easy answer. It probably shouldn't. The most important questions rarely do. If this video made you think, made you feel something, or made you see this subject a little differently than you did before, I'd love to know. Leave a comment below. Tell me your honest thought, whatever it is. And if you want more of these deep dives into the inner lives we don't always talk about, subscribe and stick around. There is so much more to explore together.